Kingdom Hearts has become a mainstay series over the years, but many forget or don't even realize what made the first entry so good, and many newcomers don't appreciate the first game for what it offers like many longtime fans do. Now I want to make this video to explain just what made the first game so good, and what its sequels have failed to do to this very day. Now the first game actually has a very grounded combat system when you compare it to all of its sequels, which at first glance can look very boring compared to the newer entries. But it soon shows what makes it so good when you learn new abilities such as Stun Impact and Slapshot. One of the most common things in the newer entries is actually that instead of relying on a really good combat system like in the first game, they were a lot more reliant on flashiness and this cool factor. Instead of actually giving us something enjoyable, they just give us a bunch of flashy stuff to distract us, and then when we're distracted from that, it makes us not realize that we're kind of being cheated out of a proper combat system, which is a very disappointing thing. One of the best examples of this is Flow Motion in Dream Drop Distance. It made the Keyblades completely useless because they do almost no damage anyway. And then the command deck couldn't even keep up with the Flow Motion either, because you have to recharge the command deck over and over, while Flow Motion you can use unlimitedly, and it kills everything on screen every single time that you use it. That is a very unbalanced game, and even though I do love Dream Drop Distance, it does have a lot of flaws, just like a lot of the Kingdom Hearts games do. Now of course, with that being said, Kingdom Hearts 1 is not a perfect game, and the combat system is not ideal or perfect of itself. However, at least it was very balanced, to where everything is always an option. You know, there were the summons, the magic, all of the abilities, and everything else was always an option in every single battle and every single situation. There was no single way to do something, unlike in the newer games, where everything has a specific way to do it, and if you don't do it that way, you're going to have a lot of trouble with it. And that's why Kingdom Hearts 1's combat system is definitely the best combat system of the entire franchise. Moving on from combat, let's actually talk about the cutscenes. And I'm not talking about graphics and I'm not talking about the story, but the cutscenes themselves. Within Kingdom Hearts 1, there are a few instances where cutscenes vary depending on your actions previously. One of the earliest examples of this is the race with Riku on Destiny Islands to name the raft. Depending on the winner, the next scene will be slightly different. Now you can't go back and change it without resetting or loading a prior save. And these types of scenes are all over the game, one being with Maleficent early on. If you skip Wonderland at first, and you go straight to Deep Jungle, then the captured Princess of Heart won't be Alice, but actually Snow White. This also occurs in boss battles like Leon and Cloud, as well as the Dark Side at the very beginning of the game. Some scenes are even completely missable, like Pinocchio and Traverse Town, prior to going to Monstro. And this type of stuff, to me, makes the experience a lot more immersive, as you can actually change order of events, and even completely erase events from the story without fear of a bad ending. Now the only other game in the series to actually feature anything similar is Kingdom Hearts 2, in two instances during the prologue, one being the Setzer match, and the other one being the money collection on day 2 that can increase your AP. Now, if Kingdom Hearts 2 had actually kept doing this and kept this up the entire game, where it gives you stat boosts as well as different equipment based on your wins and losses as well as your actions in general, in similar cases after the prologue, I would say that it was actually an enhanced version of the original system. Unfortunately, this only occurs in the prologue for some reason, and that's a bit disappointing, as it was actually a really cool system. The next thing I want to talk about is actually the map layouts, and you may think I'm kind of an idiot for this one, but actually let me explain why that is. Kingdom Hearts 1 relied heavily on platforming, especially in worlds such as Deep Jungle, as well as Agrabah. However, in sequels, platforming never really returned, and the map suffered significantly from that. Now, platforming did eventually return in 0.2, but it's very watered down and it's automated, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of platforming anyway. And this kind of shows a little bit of that flashiness that I spoke of earlier, where it kind of does something for you and it looks cool, and it distracts you from the fact that you just got cheated out of an entire game mechanic. Now in Kingdom Hearts 1, there was actually a lot of exploration as well as interactivity within the worlds that other games don't have due to their hallway-like layouts of nothingness. In Deep Jungle, you collected the slides with the projector, and you can even cook potions and ethers if you find all of the research notes scattered around. Now this makes the game a lot more interesting as you get to immerse yourself in the environment and actually properly explore and take it in. Even returning worlds are given this hallway-like layout, such as Halloween Town and Agrabah, which were both worlds with a lot of interaction within them in the first game. Dream Drop Distance also suffers from these hallways even more than 2, as the worlds guide you to everything and you're very strung along, even more than you are in 2. Now, I think it's a lot more obvious in Dream Drop Distance because the areas are so large, like the courtyard in front of the chapel in the City of Clocks. That place is huge, but there's nothing in it but like maybe 1 or 2 chests. There's just so much space, yet there's nothing actually in it, which kind of defeats the purpose of all that space anyway. I mean, why make the area so big if you're not going to put anything in it anyway? To me, that just doesn't make any sense. It just makes the world feel even more empty and even more barren than it already is. Now, of course, the sequels do some things better, but overall they fail to actually compete with the amount of exploration and interactivity that the original delivered in 2002. Now, to me, I think that they need to do something along the lines of the Pokemon series, as well as Zelda and Mario, where they keep the same formula, but they always add in something completely new with every iteration. That way, the mechanics aren't changed, but you also get something new that actually makes you want to return for another game. Because, especially with the Pokemon games, they're always the exact same game with slightly different sprites. However, they always have new features, which makes you actually want to play them again. And I think that's something along the lines of what Kingdom Hearts needs to do, because the thing is that every single one of these games is completely different. They all play a very specific way, and none of them are really even close to the same thing. And although I do understand the experimentation and the changing of things, that way it's not always repetitive, that doesn't mean that you actually have to get rid of the old mechanics. You can always keep the old mechanics, enhance them a little bit like most franchises do, and then they can even add in new features instead of getting rid of the old ones and replacing them. And that's kind of the thing with Kingdom Hearts. They always take out all of the old mechanics that are really good and replace them with new ones as an experimentation. And I don't have a problem with new stuff, but there's no reason to get rid of the old stuff when you can just keep the old stuff and add in a new feature every time. And I think that if Kingdom Hearts series keeps this in mind, then I think that that will definitely improve the gameplay of the series, as well as increase the fan base, because every one of these games are so different that if you don't like that specific genre that that game belongs to, you're not going to be all that enticed to play it. So I feel like if they do keep this in mind later on, then I think that will definitely help the series quite a bit. But with that being said, let me know what you think. Tell me, do you agree with me? Do you not agree with me? And definitely let me know why. With that being said, I hope to see you in the next video, and I'll see you next time.